Hello, everybody. How are we doing today? It's so lovely to see you all again. Missed you. All right, everybody. Are you ready for more Last Unicorn? For those of you who need a refresher for yesterday, what had happened was in Chapter 3, the unicorn and Schmendrick the magician, who was sympathetic to her while she was captured, helped her escape, and the harpy was freed and slew both Rook and Mommy Fortuna. Chapter 4 As the unicorn and Schmendrick begin to travel together, because they are heading towards King Haggard and the Red Bull. They come across a well-to-do town that is suddenly raided by a man named Jack Jingley, who takes Schmendrick back to his leader. And in Chapter 5, we meet this leader, Captain Cully, who is a little touched with delusions of grandeur. He's written 31 of his own ballads, all of which seek to extol him as some sort of Robin Hood archetype. He is the only one in his group who believes this hype. Schmendrick casts a spell that seems to make Robin Hood, or an illusion of him, real, and Cully's crew run off into the forest chasing after these illusions. Jack Jingley and Captain Cully are the only ones left of that group, and they decide to take Schmendrick to King Haggard, believing that he is Haggard's son, and sent to bedevil them. And that brings us to where we were yesterday. Now, let us continue with Chapter 6. Chapter 6. Captain Cully fell asleep 13 stanzas into the 19th song, and Schmendrick, who had stopped laughing somewhat sooner, promptly set about trying to free himself. He strained against his bonds with all his strength, but they held fast. Jack Jingley had wrapped him in enough rope to rig a small schooner and tied knots the size of skulls. Gently, gently, he counseled himself. No man with the power to summon Robin Hood, indeed to create him, can be bound for long. A word, a wish, and this tree must be an acorn on a branch again. This rope be green in a marsh. But he knew before he called on it that whatever had visited him for a moment was gone again, leaving only an ache where it had been. He felt like an abandoned chrysalis. "Do as you will," he said softly. Captain Cully roused at his voice and sang the 14th stanza. "There are 50 swords without the house, and 50 more within. And I do fear me, Captain, they are like to do a sin." "Undone, undone," says Captain Cully, "and never fear again. For there may be 100 swords, but we are 7 men." "I hope you get slaughtered," the magician told him, but Cully was asleep again. Schmendrick attempted a few simple spells for escaping, but he could not use his hands, and he had no more heart for tricks. What happened instead was that the tree fell in love with him, and began to murmur fondly of the joy to be found in the eternal embrace of a red oak. "Always, always," it sighed, "faithfulness beyond any man's deserving. I will keep the color of your eyes when no other in the world remembers your name. There is no immortality, but a tree's love." "I'm engaged," Schmendrick excused himself, "to a western larch, since childhood. Marriage by contract, no choice in the matter. Hopeless. Our StoRei is never to be." A gust of fury shook the oak, as though a storm were coming to it alone. "Gulls and fire blight on her!" it whispered savagely. "Damned softwood, cursed conifer, deceitful evergreen, she'll never have you. We will perish together, and all trees shall treasure our tragedy." Along his length, Schmendrick could feel the tree heaving like a heart, and he feared that it might actually split in two, with rage. The ropes were growing steadily tighter around him, and the night was beginning to turn red and yellow. He tried to explain to the oak that love was generous precisely because it could never be immortal. And then he tried to yell for Captain Cully, but he could only make a small creaking sound, like a tree. She means well, he thought, and gave himself up for loved. Then the ropes went slack as he lunged against them, and he fell to the ground on his back, wriggling for air. The unicorn stood over him, dark as blood in his darkened vision. She touched him with her horn. When he could rise, she turned away, and the magician followed her, wary of the oak, though it was once again as still as any tree that had never loved. The sky was still black, but it was a watery darkness through which Smendrick could see the violet dawn swimming. Hard silver clouds were melting as the sky grew warm. Shadows dulled, sounds lost their shape, and shapes had not yet decided what they were going to be that day. Even the wind wondered about itself. "Did you see me?" he asked the unicorn. "Were you watching? Did you see what I made?" "Yes," she answered. "It was true magic." The loss came back, cold and bitter as a sword. "It's gone now," he said. "I had it. It had me. But it's gone now. I couldn't hold it." The unicorn floated on before him, silent as a feather. Close by, a familiar voice said, "Leaving us so early, magician? The men will be sorry they missed you." He turned and saw Molly Grew leaning against a tree. Dress and dirty hair tattered alike, bare feet, bleeding and beslimed. She gave him a bat's grin. "Surprise," she said. "It's Maid Marian." Then she saw the unicorn. She neither moved nor spoke, but her tawny eyes were suddenly big with tears. For a long moment she did not move. Then each fist seized a handful for him, and she warped her knees into a kind of trembling crouch. Her ankles were crossed and her eyes were lowered, but for all that, it took Schmendrick another moment to realize that Molly Grew was curtsying. He burst out laughing, and Molly sprang up, red from hairline to throat hollow. "Where have you been?" she cried. "Damn you! Where have you been?" She took a few steps toward Schmendrick, but she was looking beyond him, at the unicorn. When she tried to get by, the magician stood in her way. "You don't talk like that," he told her, still uncertain that Molly had recognized the unicorn. "Don't you know how to behave, woman? You don't curtsy either." But Molly pushed him aside and went up to the unicorn, scolding her as though she were a strayed milk cow. "Where have you been?" Before the whiteness and the shining horn, Molly shrank to a shrilling beetle, but this time it was the unicorn's old dark eyes that looked down. "I am here now," she said at last. Molly laughed, with her lips flat. "And what good is it to me that you're here now? Where were you 20 years ago? 10 years ago? How dare you? How dare you come to me now when I'm this?" With a flap of her hand, she summed herself up. Barren face, desert eyes, yellowing heart. "I wish you had never come. Why do you come now?" The tears began to slide down the sides of her nose. The unicorn made no reply, and Schmendrick said, "She is the last. She is the last unicorn in the world." "She would be," Molly sniffed. "It would be the last unicorn in the world that came to Molly Grew." She reached up then to lay her hand on the unicorn's cheek, but both of them flinched a little, and the touch came to rest on the swift, shivering place under the jaw. Molly said, "It's all right. I forgive you." Unicorns are not to be forgiven. The magician felt himself growing giddy with jealousy, not only of the touch, but of something like a secret that was moving between Molly and the unicorn. "Unicorns are for beginnings," he said. "For innocence and purity, for newness. Unicorns are for young girls." Molly was stroking the unicorn's throat as timidly as though she were blind. She dried her grimy tears on the white mane. "You don't know much about unicorns," she said. The sky was jade gray now, and the trees that had been drawn on the dark a moment ago were real trees again, hissing in the dawn wind. Schmendrick said coldly, looking at the unicorn, "We must go." Molly agreed promptly. "Aye, before the men stumble on us and slit your throat for cheating them, the poor lads." She looked over her shoulder. "I had some things I wanted to take, but they don't matter now. I'm ready." Schmendrick barred her way again as he stepped forward. "You can't come with us. We're on a quest." His voice and eyes were as stern as he could make them, but he could feel his nose being bewildered. He had never been able to discipline his nose. Molly's own face closed like a castle against him, trundling out the guns and slings and cauldrons of boiling lead. "And who are you to say we?" "I'm her guide," the magician said importantly. The unicorn made a soft, wondering sound like a cat calling her kittens. Molly laughed aloud and made it back. "You don't know much about unicorns," she repeated. "She's letting you travel with her, though I can't think why. But she has no need of you. She doesn't need me either, heaven knows. But she'll take me too. Ask her." The unicorn made the soft sound again, and the castle of Molly's face lowered the drawbridge and threw wide even its deepest keep. "Ask her," she said. Schmendrick knew the unicorn's answer by the sinking in his heart. He meant to be wise, but then his envy and emptiness hurt him, and he heard himself cry out sadly, "Never! I forbid it! I, Schmendrick the magician!" His voice darkened, and even his nose grew menacing. "Be wary of rousing a wizard's wrath. Rousing. If I chose to turn you into a frog—" "I should laugh myself sick," said Molly Grew pleasantly. "You're handy with fairy tales, but you can't turn cream into butter." Her eyes gleamed with a sudden mean understanding. "Have sense, man," she said. "What were you going to do with the last unicorn in the world? Keep her in a cage?" The unicorn turned away to keep Molly from seeing his face. He did not look directly at the unicorn, but stole small sights of her as stealthily as though he could be made to put them back. White and secret, morning-horned, she regarded him with piercing gentleness, but he could not touch her. He said to the thin woman, "You don't even know where we are bound." "Do you think it matters to me?" Molly asked. She made the cat sound once more. Schmendrick said, "We are journeying to King Haggard's country to find the Red Bull." Molly's skin was frightened for a moment, whatever her bones believed or her heart knew. But then the unicorn breathed softly upon her cupped hand, and Molly smiled as she closed her fingers on the warmth. "Well, you're going the wrong way," she said. The sun was rising as she led them back the way they had come, past Cully, still slumped asleep in his stump, across the clearing, and away. The men were returning. Dead branches cracked close at hand, and brush broke with a splashing sound. Once they had to crouch among thorns while two of Cully's weary rogues limped by, wondering bitterly whether the vision of Robin Hood had been real or not. "I smell them," the first man was saying. "Eyes are easy to deceive and cheats by nature, but surely no shadow has a smell." "The eyes are perjurers right enough," grunted the second man, who seemed to be wearing a swamp. "But do you truly trust the testimony of your ears, of your nose, or the root of your tongue? Not I, my friend. The universe lies to our senses, and they lie to us. For how can we ourselves be anything but liars? For myself, I trust neither message nor messenger, neither what I am told nor what I see. There may be truth somewhere, but it never gets down to me." "Ah," said the first man with a black grin, "but you came running with the rest of us to go with Robin Hood, and you hunted for him all night, crying and calling like the rest of us. Why not save yourself the trouble, if you know better?" "Well, you never know," the other answered thickly, spitting mud. "I could be wrong." There were a prince and a princess sitting by a stream in a wooded valley. Their 7 servants had set up a scarlet canopy beneath a tree, and the royal young couple ate a box lunch to the accompaniment of lutes and therbos. They hardly spoke a word to one another until they had finished the meal, and then the princess sighed and said, "Well, I suppose I'd best get the silly business over with." The prince began to read a magazine. "You might at least," said the princess, but the prince kept on reading. The princess made a sign to two of the servants, who began to play an older music on their lutes. Then she took a few steps on the grass, held up a bridle bright as butter, and called, "Here, unicorn! Here! Here, my pretty! Here to me! Come, 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 come!" The prince snickered. "It's not your chickens you're calling, you know," he remarked without looking up. "Why don't you sing something instead of clucking like that?" "Well, I'm doing the best I can," the princess cried. "I've never called one of these things before." But after a little silence she began to sing. "I am a king's daughter, and if I cared to care, the moon that has no mistress would flutter in my hair. No one dares to cherish what I choose to crave. Never have I hungered that I did not have. I am a king's daughter, and I grow old within the prison of my person, the shackles of my skin. And I would run away and beg from door to door, just to see your shadow once and never more." So she sang and sang again, and then she called, "Nice unicorn, pretty, pretty, pretty," for a little longer, and then she said angrily, "Well, I've done as much as I'll do. I'm going home." The prince yawned and folded his magazine. "You satisfied custom well enough," he told her, "and no one expected more than that. It was just a formality. Now we can be married." "Yes," the princess said, "now we can be married." The servants began to pack everything away again, while the two with the lutes played joyous wedding music. The princess's voice was a little sad and defiant as she said, "If there really were such things as unicorns, one would have come to me. I called as sweetly as anyone could, and I had the golden bridle, and of course I am pure and untouched." "For all of me, you are," the prince answered indifferently. "As I say, you satisfy custom. You don't satisfy my father, but then, neither do I. That would take a unicorn." He was tall, and his face was as soft and pleasant as a marshmallow. When they and their retinue were gone, the unicorn came out of the wood, followed by Molly and the magician, and took up her journey again. A long time later, wandering in another country, where there were no streams and nothing green, Molly asked her why she had not gone to the princess's song. Schmendrick drew near to listen to the answer, though he stayed on his side of the unicorn. He never walked on Molly's side. The unicorn said, "That king's daughter would never have run away to see my shadow. If I had shown myself and she had known me, she would have been more frightened than if she had seen a dragon, for no one makes promises to a dragon. I remember that once it never mattered to me whether or not princesses meant what they say. I went to them all and laid my head in their laps, and a few of them rode on my back, though most were afraid. But I have no time for them now, princesses or kitchen maids. I have no time." Molly said something strange then, for a woman who never slept a night through without waking many times to see if the unicorn was still there, and whose dreams were all of golden bridles and gentle young thieves. "It's the princesses who have no time," she said. "The sky spins and drags everything along with it, princesses and magicians, and poor Cully and all. But you stand still. You never see anything just once. I wish you could be a princess for a little while, or a flower, or a duck, something that can't wait." She sang a verse of a doleful, limping song, halting after each line as she tried to recall the next. "Who has choices need not choose. We must, who have none, We can love, but what we lose. What is gone is gone. Schmendrick peered over the unicorn's back into Molly's territory.
Where did you hear that song?
He demanded. It was the first he had spoken to her since the dawn when she joined the journey. Molly shook her head. I don't remember. I've known it a long time. The land had grown leaner day by day as they traveled on, and the faces of the folk they met with had grown bitter with the brown grass. But to the unicorn's eyes, Molly was becoming a softer country, full of pools and caves where old flowers came burning out of the ground. Under the dirt and indifference, she appeared only 37 or 38 years old, no older than Schmendrick, surely, despite the magician's birthdayless face. Her rough hair bloomed, her skin quickened, and her voice was nearly as gentle to all things as it was when she spoke to the unicorn. The eyes would never be joyous any more than they could ever turn green or blue, but they too had wakened in the earth. She walked eagerly into King Haggard's realm on bare, blistered feet, and she sang often. And far away on the other side of the unicorn, Schmendrick the magician stalked in silence. His black cloak was sprouting holes, coming undone, and so was he. The rain that renewed Molly did not fall on him, and he seemed ever more parched and deserted, like the land itself. The unicorn could not heal him. A touch of her horn could have brought him back from death, but over despair she had no power, nor over magic that had come and gone. So they journeyed together, following the fleeing darkness into a wind that tasted like nails. The rind of the country cracked, and the flesh of it peeled back into gullies and ravines, or shriveled into scabby hills. The sky was so high and pale that it disappeared during the day, and the unicorn sometimes thought that the three of them must look as blind and helpless as slugs in the sunlight, with their log or their dank rock tumbled away. But she was a unicorn still, with a unicorn's way of growing more beautiful in evil times and places. Even the breath of the toads that grumbled in the ditches and dead trees stopped when they saw her. Toads would have been more hospitable than the sullen folk of Haggard's country. Their villages lay bald as bones, between knife-like hills where nothing grew, and they themselves had hearts unmistakably as sour as boiled beer. Their children stoned strangers into town, and their dogs chased them out again. Several of the dogs never returned, for Schmendrick had developed a quick hand and a taste for mongrel. This infuriated the townsmen as no mere theft would have done. They gave nothing away, and they knew that their enemies were those who did. The unicorn was weary of human beings, watching her companions as they slept, seeing the shadows of their dreams scurry over their faces. She would feel herself bending under the heaviness of knowing their names. Then she would run until morning to ease the ache, swifter than rain, swift as loss, racing to catch up with the time when she had known nothing at all but the sweetness of being herself. Often then, between the rush of one breath and the reach of another, it came to her that Schmendrick and Molly were long dead, and King Haggard as well, and the Red Bull met and mastered. So long ago that the grandchildren of the stars that had seen it all happen were withering now, turning to coal, and that she was still the only unicorn left in the world. Then, one owlless autumn evening, they rounded a ridge and saw the castle. It crept into the sky from the far side of a long, deep valley, thin and twisted, bristling with thorny turrets, dark and jagged as a giant's grin. I'll just show you this quick illustration. Molly laughed outright, but the unicorn shivered, for to her the crooked towers seemed to be groping toward her through the dusk. Beyond the castle the sea glimmered like iron. Haggard's fortress, Schmendrick murmured, shaking his head in wonderment. Haggard's dire keep. A witch built it for him, they say. but he wouldn't pay her for her work, so she put a curse on the castle. She swore that one day it would sink into the sea with Haggard, when his greed caused the sea to overflow. Then she gave a fearful shriek, the way they do, and vanished in a sulphurous puff. Haggard moved in right away. He said no tyrant's castle was complete without a curse. I don't blame him for not paying her, Molly Grew said scornfully. I could jump on that place myself and scatter it like a pile of leaves. Anyway, I hope the witch has something interesting to do while she waits for that curse to come home. The sea is greater than anyone's greed. Bony birds struggled across the sky, squealing, help me, help me, help me! And small black shapes bobbled at the lightless windows of King Haggard's castle. A wet, slow smell found the unicorn. Where's the bull? She asked. Where does Haggard keep the bull? No one keeps the red bull, the magician replied quietly. I have heard that he roams at night and lies up by day in a great cavern beneath the castle. We'll know soon enough, but that's not our problem now. The nearer danger lies there. He pointed down into the valley where a few lights had begun to shiver. That is Hag's Gate, he said. Molly made no answer, but she touched the unicorn with a hand as cold as a cloud. She often put her hands on the unicorn when she was sad or tired or afraid. This is King Haggard's town, Schmendrick said. The first one he took when he came over the sea, the one that has lain longest under his hand. It has a wicked name, though none I ever met could say exactly why. No one goes into Hag's Gate, and nothing comes out of it but tales to make children behave. Monsters, werebeasts, witch covens, demons in broad daylight, and the like. But there is something evil in Hag's Gate, I think. Mommy Fortuna would never go there, and once she said that even Haggard was not safe while Hag's Gate stood. There is something here. He peered closely at Molly as he spoke, for it was his one bitter pleasure these days to see her frightened in spite of the white presence of the unicorn. But she answered him quite calmly with her hands at her sides. I've heard Hag's Gate called the town that no man knows. Maybe its secret was waiting for a woman to find it out. A woman and a unicorn. But what's to be done with you? Schmendrick smiled then. I'm no man, he said. I'm a magician with no magic, and that's no one at all. The foxfire lights of Hag's Gate grew brighter as the unicorn watched them, but not even a flint flared in King Haggard's castle. It was too dark to see men moving on the walls, but across the valley she could hear the soft boom of armor and the clatter of pikes on stone. Sentinels had met and marched away again. The smell of the Red Bull sported all around the unicorn as she started down the thin, brambly path that led to Hag's Gate. Chapter 7. The town of Hag's Gate was shaped like a footprint, long toes splaying from a broad paw and ending in the dark claws of a digger. And indeed, where the other towns of King Haggard's realm seemed to scratch like sparrows at the mean land, Hag's Gate was well and deeply dug in. Its streets were smoothly paved, its gardens glowed, and its proud houses might have grown up out of the earth like trees. Lights shone in every window, and the three travelers could hear voices, and dogs barking, and dishes being scrubbed until they squeaked. They halted by a high hedge, wondering, do you suppose we took a wrong turn somewhere and this isn't Hag's Gate at all? Molly whispered. She brushed foolishly at her hopeless rags and tatters. I knew I should have brought my good dress, she sighed. Schmendrick rubbed the back of his neck wearily. It's Hag's Gate, he answered her. It must be Hag's Gate, and yet there's no smell of sorcery, no air of black magic. But why the legends, then? Why the fables and fairy tales? Very confusing, especially when you've had half a turnip for dinner. The unicorn said nothing. Beyond the town, darker than dark, King Haggard's castle teetered like a lunatic on stilts, and beyond the castle, the sea slid. The scent of the Red Bull moved in the night, cold among the town smells of cooking and living. Schmendrick said, the good people must all be indoors, counting their blessings.
I'll hail them.
He stepped forward and threw back his cloak, but he had not yet opened his mouth when a hard voice said out of the air,
Save your breath, stranger, while you still have it.
4 men sprang from behind the hedge. 2 of them set their swords at Schmendrick's throat, while another guarded Molly with a pair of pistols. The 4th approached the unicorn to seize her mane, but she reared up, shining fiercely, and he jumped away.
Your name?
The man who had first spoken demanded of Schmendrick. He was middle-aged or more, as were they all, dressed in fine, dark clothing. Gick, said the magician because of the swords.
Gick,
mused the man with the pistols.
an alien name? Naturally.
The first man said.
All names are alien in Hagsgate. Well, Mr. Gick,
He went on, lowering his sword slightly to the point where Schmendrick's collarbones converged.
if you and Mrs. Gick would kindly tell us what brings you skulking here.
Schmendrick found his voice at that.
I hardly know the woman, he roared. My name is Schmendrick, Schmendrick the magician, and I am hungry and tired and unpleasant. Put those things away, or you'll each have a scorpion by the wrong end.
The 4 men looked at one another.
A magician,
said the first man.
the very thing.
2 of the others nodded, but the man who had tried to capture the unicorn grumbled.
Anyone can say he's a magician these days. The old standards are gone. The old values have been abandoned. Besides, a real magician has a beard. Well, if he isn't a magician,
the first said lightly,
he'll wish he were soon enough.
He sheathed his sword and bowed to Schmendrick and Molly.
I am Drin,
he said,
and it is possibly a pleasure to welcome you to Hagsgate. You spoke of being hungry, I believe. That's easily remedied, and then perhaps you will do us a good turn in your professional capacity. Come with me.
Grown suddenly gracious and apologetic, he led them toward a lighted inn, while the 3 other men followed close behind. More townsfolk came running up now, streaming eagerly from their houses with their own dinners half eaten and their tea left steaming, so that by the time Schmendrick and Molly were seated, there were nearly 100 people wedged together on the inn's long benches, jamming into the doorway and falling through the windows. The unicorn, unnoticed, paced slowly after, a white mare with strange eyes. The man named Drin sat at the same table with Schmendrick and Molly, chattering as they ate and filling their glasses with a furry black wine. Molly drank very little. She sat quietly, looking at the faces around her, and noting that none seemed any younger than Drin's face, though a few were much older. There was a way in which all the Hagsgate faces were very much alike, but she could not find it.
And now,
Drin said when the meal was over,
now you must permit me to explain why we greeted you so uncivilly.
Psh, no need, Schmendrick chuckled. The wine had made him chuckly and easy, and had brightened his green eyes to gold. What I want to know is the reason for the rumors that have Hagsgate full of ghouls and werewolves. Most absurd thing I ever heard of. Drin smiled. He was a knot-tea man with a turtle's hard, empty jaws.
It's the same thing,
he said.
Listen, the town of Hagsgate is under a curse.
The room was suddenly very still, and in the beery light, the faces of the townsfolk looked as tight and pale as cheese. Schmendrick laughed again. A blessing, you mean? In this bony kingdom of old haggards, you're like another land altogether. A spring, an oasis. I agree with you that there's enchantment here, but I drink to it. Drin stopped him as he raised his glass.
Not that toast, my friend. Will you drink to a woe 50 years old? It is that long since our sorrow fell, when King Haggard built his castle by the sea.
When the witch built it, I think. Schmendrick wagged a finger at him. Credit where it's due, after all.
Ah, you know that story.
Drin said.
Then you must also know that Hagrid refused to pay the witch when her task was completed.
The magician nodded. Aye, and she cursed him for his greed. Cursed the castle, rather. But what had that to do with Hagsgate? The town had done the witch no wrong.
No, Drin replied, but neither had it done her any good. She could not unmake the castle, or would not, for she fancied herself an artistic sort, and boasted that her work was years ahead of its time. Anyway, she came to the elders of Hagsgate and demanded that they forced Hagrid to pay what was due her. Look at me and see yourselves, she rasped. That's the true test of a town or of a king. A lord who cheats an ugly old witch will cheat his own folk by and by. Stop him while you can, before you grow used to him.
Drin sipped his wine and thoughtfully filled Schmendrick's glass once more.
Hagrid paid her no money,
He went on.
and Hagsgate, alas, paid her no heed. She was treated politely and referred to the proper authorities, whereupon she flew into a fury and screamed that in our eagerness to make no enemies at all, we had now made two.
He paused, covering his eyes with lids so thin that Molly was sure he could see through them like a bird. With his eyes closed, he said,
It was then that she cursed Hagrid's castle, and our town as well. Thus his greed brought ruin to us all.
In the sighing silence, Molly Grew's voice came down like a hammer on a horseshoe, as though she were again berating poor Captain Cully. Hagrid's less at fault than you yourselves, she mocked the folk of Hagsgate, for he was only one thief and you were many. You earned your trouble by your own avarice, not your king's. Drin opened his eyes and gave her an angry look.
We earned nothing,
He protested.
It was our parents and grandparents whom the witch asked for help, and I'll grant you that they were as much to blame as Hagrid in their way. We would have handled the matter quite differently.
And every middle-aged face in the room scowled at every older face. One of the old men spoke up in a voice that wheezed and meowed. You would have done just as we did. There were crops to harvest and stock to tend, as there still are. There was Hagrid to live with, as there still is. We know very well how you would have behaved. You are our children. Drin glowered him down, and other men began to shout spitefully. The magician quieted them all by asking, What was the curse? Could it have anything to do with the Red Bull? The name rang coldly, even in the bright room, and Molly felt suddenly lonely. On an impulse, she added her own question, though it had nothing to do with the conversation. Have any of you seen a unicorn? It was then that she learned two things, the difference between silence and utter silence, and that she had been quite right to ask that question. The Hagsgate faces tried not to move, but they did move. Drin said carefully, We never see the bull, and we never speak of him. Nothing that concerns him can be any business of ours. As for unicorns, there are none. There never were. He poured the black wine again.
I will tell you the words of the curse,
he said. He folded his hands before him and began to chant.
You whom Hagrid holds in thrall, share his feast and share his fall. You shall see your fortune flower, till the torrent takes the tower. Yet none but one of Hagsgate town may bring the castle swirling down.
A few others joined in as he recited the old malediction. Their voices were sad and far, as though they were not in the room at all, but were tumbling in the wind, high over the inn's chimney, helpless as dead leaves. What is it about their faces? Molly wondered. I almost know. The magician sat silently by her, rolling his wineglass in his long hands.
When those words were first spoken,
Drin said,
Hagrid had not been long in the country, and all of it was still soft and blooming, all but the town of Hagsgate. Hagsgate was then, as this land has become, a scrabbly, bare place, where men put great stones on the roofs of their huts to keep them from blowing away.
He grinned bitterly at the other men.
Crops to harvest, stock to tend. You grew cabbages and rutabagas and a few pale potatoes, and in all of Hagsgate there was but one weary cow. Strangers thought the town accursed, having offended some vindictive witch or other.
Molly felt the unicorn go by in the street, then turn and come back, restless as the torches on the walls that bowed and wriggled. She wanted to run out to her, but instead she asked quietly, "And afterward, when that had come true?"
Drin answered, "From that moment, we have known nothing but bounty. Our grim earth has grown so kind that gardens and orchards spring up by themselves. We need neither to plant nor to tend them. Our flocks multiply. Our craftsmen become more clever in their sleep. The air we breathe and the water we drink keep us from ever knowing illness. All sorrow parts to go around us. And this has come about while the rest of the realm, once so green, has shriveled to cinders under Hagrid's hand. For 50 years, none but he and we have prospered. It is as though all others have been cursed."
"Share his feast and share his fall," Schmendrick murmured. I see. He gulped another glass of the black wine and laughed. "But old King Hagrid still rules and will until the sea overflows. You don't know what a real curse is. Let me tell you my troubles." Easy tears suddenly glittered in his eyes. "To begin with, my mother never liked me. She pretended, but I knew—" Drin interrupted him, and just then Molly realized what was strange about the folk of Hagsgate. Every single one of them was well and warmly dressed, but the faces that peered out of their fine clothes were the faces of poor people, cold as ghosts, and too hungry to eat. Drin said,
Yet none but one of Hagsgate Town may bring the castle swirling down.
"How
How can we delight it in our good fortune, when we know that it must end, and that one of us will end it? Every day makes us richer, and brings us one day nearer to our doom. Magician, for 50 years we have lived leanly, avoided attachments, untied all habits, readying ourselves for the sea. We have taken not a moment's joy in our wealth, or in anything else, for joy is just one more thing to lose. Pity Hagsgate, strangers, for all in the wretched world there can be no town more unhappy."
Lost, the townfolk whimper. Misery, we. Molly Grew stared wordlessly at them, but Schmendrick said respectfully, "That's a good curse. That's a professional job. I always say, whatever you're having done, go to an expert. It pays in the long run." Drin frowned, and Molly nudged Schmendrick. The magician blinked. "Oh, well, what is it you wish of me? I must warn you that I'm not a very skillful sorcerer, but I will be glad to lift this curse from you if I can."
"I have not taken you for any more than you are," Drin answered, "but such as you are, you shall do as well as any. I think we will leave the curse the way it is. If it were lifted, we might not become poor again, but we would no longer grow steadily richer, and that would be just as bad. No, our real task is to keep Hagrid's tower from falling, and since the hero who will destroy it can only come from Hagsgate, this should not be impossible. For one thing, we allow no strangers to settle here. We keep them away by force if we must, but more often by guile. Those dark tales of Hagsgate that you spoke of, we invented them ourselves, and spread them as widely as we could to make certain that we would have few visitors."
He smiled proudly with his hollow jaws. Schmendrick propped his chin on his knuckles and regarded Drin with a sagging smile. "What about your own children?" he asked. "How can you keep one of them from growing up to fulfill the curse?" He looked around the inn, sleepily studying every wrinkled face that looked back at him. "Come to think of it," he said slowly, "are there no young people in the magazine? Are there no young people in this town? How early do you send children to bed in Hagsgate? No one answered him. Molly could hear blood creaking in ears and eyes, and skin twitching like water plucked by the wind. Then Drin said,
We have no children. We have had none since the day the curse was laid upon us.
He coughed into his fist and added,
It seemed the most obvious way of foiling the witch.
Schmendrick threw back his head and laughed without making a sound, laughed to make the torches dance. Molly realized that the magician was quite drunk. Drin's mouth disappeared and his eyes hardened into cracked porcelain.
I see no humor in her plight,
He said softly.
none at all.
None, Schmendrick gurgled, bowing over the table and spilling his wine. None, pardon me, none, none at all. Under the angry gaze of 200 eyes, he managed to recover himself and reply seriously to Drin. Then it would seem to me that you have no worries. None that would worry you, anyway. A small wee of laughter sneaked out between his lips, like steam from a tea kettle.
So it would seem.
Drin leaned forward and touched Schmendrick's wrist with 2 fingers.
But I have not told you all the truth. 21 years ago, a child was born in Hagsgate. Whose child it was, we never knew. I found it myself as I was crossing the marketplace one winter's night. It was lying on a butcher's block, not crying although there was snow, but warm and chuckling under a comforter of stray cats. They were all purring together, and the sound was heavy with knowledge. I stood by the strange cradle for a long time, pondering while the snow fell and the cats purred prophecy.
He stopped, and Molly Grew said eagerly, You took the child home with you, of course, and raised it as your own. Drin laid his hands, palm up, on the table.
I chased the cats away,
He said.
and went home alone.
Molly's face turned the color of mist. Drin shrugged slightly.
I know the birth of a hero when I see it, he said. Omens and portents, snakes in the nursery. Had it not been for the cats, I might have chanced the child, but they made it so obvious, so mythological. What was I to do? Knowingly harbor Hagsgate's doom?
His lip twitched as though a hook had set in it.
As it happens, I erred, but it was on the side of tenderness. When I returned at sunrise, the baby had vanished.
Schmendrick was drawing pictures with his finger in a puddle of wine and might have heard nothing at all. Drin went on.
Naturally, no one ever admitted to leaving the child in the marketplace, and though we searched every house, from cellar to dovecote, we never found it again. I might have concluded that wolves had taken the brat, or even that I had dreamed the whole encounter, cats and all, before the fact that on the very next day a herald of King Haggard's came riding into town, ordering us to rejoice. After 30 years of waiting, the king had a son at last.
He looked away from the look on Molly's face.
Our foundling, incidentally, was a boy.
Schmendrick licked the tip of his finger and looked up. Lear, he said thoughtfully. Prince Lear. But there was no other way to account for his appearance.
Not likely, Drin snorted. Any woman that would marry Haggard, even Haggard, would refuse. He gave out the tale that the boy was a nephew, whom he graciously adopted on the death of his parents. But Haggard has no relatives, no family. There are those who say he was born of an overcast, as Venus was born out of the sea. No one would give King Haggard a child to raise.
The magician calmly held out his glass and filled it himself when Drin refused. Well, we got one somewhere, and good for him. But how could he have come by your little cat baby? Drin said,
He walks in Hagsgate at night, not often, but now and then. Many of us have seen him, tall, haggard, gray as driftwood, prowling alone under an iron moon, picking up dropped coins, broken dishes, spoons, stones, handkerchiefs, rings, stepped on apples, anything, everything, no reason for it. It was Haggard who took the child. I am as certain of it as I am certain that Prince Lear is the one who will topple the tower and sink Hagrid and Hagsgate together.
I know he is, Molly broke in. I hope Prince Lear is that baby you left to die. And I hope he drowns your town. And I hope the fish nibble you bare as corn cobs. Schmendrick kicked her ankle as hard as he could, for the listeners were beginning to hiss like embers, and a few were rising to their feet. He asked again, What is it you wish of me? You are on your way to Hagrid's castle, I believe. Schmendrick nodded. Ah, Drin said. Now a clever magician would find it simple to become friendly with Prince Lear, who is reputed to be a young man of eagerness and curiosity. A clever magician might be acquainted with all manner of odd potions and powders, poppets and philters, herbs and banes and unguents. A clever magician, mind you, I said clever, no more. A clever magician might be able, under the proper circumstances. He let the rest drift away unspoken, but no less said. For a meal? Schmendrick stood up, knocking his chair over. He leaned on the table with both hands, breathing harshly. Is that the going rate these days? Dinner and wine, the price of a poisoned prince? You'll have to do better than that, friend Drin. I wouldn't do in a chimney sweep for such a fee. Molly Grew gripped his arm, crying, What are you saying? The magician shook her hand away, but at the same time he lowered one eyelid in a slow wink. Drin leaned back in his chair, smiling. I never haggle with a professional, he said. 25 pieces of gold. They haggled for half an hour, Schmendrick demanding 100 gold pieces and Drin refusing to offer more than 40. At last, they settled at 70, half to be paid then and half upon Schmendrick's successful return. Drin counted out the money on the spot from a leather pouch at his belt. You'll spend the night at Hagsgate, of course, he said. I would be pleased to put you up myself. But the magician shook his head. I think not. We'll go on to the castle, since we're so near it now. The sooner there, the sooner back, eh? And he grinned a crafty and conspiratorial grin. Hagrid's castle is always dangerous, Drin warned, but it is never more dangerous than at night. They say that about Hagsgate, too, Schmendrick replied. You mustn't believe everything you hear, Drin. He walked to the door of the inn, and Molly followed him. There he turned and beamed at the folk of Hagsgate, hunched in their finery. I would like to leave you with this last thought, he told them. The most professional curse ever snarled, or croaked, or thundered can have no effect on a pure heart. Good night. Outside, the night lay coiled in the street, cobra cold, and scaled with stars. There was no moon. Schmendrick stepped out boldly, chuckling to himself and jingling his gold coins. Without looking at Molly, he said, Suckers, to assume so lightly that all magicians dabble in death. Now if they had wanted me to lift the curse, I might have done that for no more than a meal. I might have done it for a single glass of wine. I'm glad you didn't, Molly said savagely. They deserve their fate. They deserve worse. To leave a child out in the snow. Well, if they hadn't, he couldn't have grown up to be a prince. Haven't you ever been in the fairy tale before? The magician's voice was kind and drunken, and his eyes were as bright as his new money. The hero has to make the prophecy come true, and the villain is the one who has to stop him. Though in another kind of story, it's more often the other way around. And the hero has to be in trouble from the moment of his birth, or he's not a real hero. It's a great relief to find out about Prince Lear. I've been waiting for this tale to turn up a leading man. The unicorn was there as a star is suddenly there, moving a little way ahead of them, a sail in the dark. Molly said, If Lear is the hero, what is she? That's different. Hagrid and Lear and Drin and you and I, we are in a fairy tale, and must go where it goes. But she is real. She is real. Schmendrick yawned and hiccuped and shivered all at once. We'd better hurry, he said. Perhaps we should have stayed the night, but old Drin makes me nervous. I'm sure I deceived him completely, but all the same. It seemed to Molly, dreaming and waking as she walked, that Hag's Gate was stretching itself like a pall to hold the three of them back, curling around them and batting them gently back and forth, so that they trod in their own tracks over and over. In 100 years they reached the last house and the end of the town. In another 50 years they had blundered through the damp fields, the vineyards, and the crouching orchards. Molly dreamed that sheep leered at them from treetops, and that cold cows stepped on their feet and shoved them off the withering path. But the light of the unicorn sailed on ahead, and Molly followed it, awake or asleep. King Hagrid's castle was stalking in the sky, a blind black bird that fished the valley by night. Molly could hear the breathing of its wings. Then the unicorn's breath stirred in her hair, and she heard Schmendrick asking, "How many men?" "3 men," the unicorn said. "They have been behind us since we left Hagsgate, but now they're coming swiftly. Listen." Steps too soft for their quickness, voices too muffled to mean any good. The magician rubbed his eyes. "Perhaps Drin has started to feel guilty about underpaying his poisoner," he murmured. "Perhaps his conscience is keeping him awake. Anything is possible. Perhaps I have feathers." He took Molly by the arm and pulled her down into a hard hollow by the side of the road. The unicorn lay nearby, still as moonlight. Daggers gleaming like fish trails on a dark sea. A voice, suddenly loud and angry. "I tell you, we've lost them! We passed them a mile back where I heard that rustle. I'm damned if I'll run any farther." "Be still," a second voice whispered fiercely. "Do you want them to escape and betray us? You're afraid of the magician, but you'd do better to be afraid of the Red Bull. If Hagrid finds out about our half of the curse, he'll send the bull to trample us all into crumbs." The first man answered in a softer tone. "It isn't that I'm afraid. A magician without a beard is no magician at all. But we're wasting our time. They left the road and cut across country as soon as they knew we were following. We could chase along here all night and never come up with them." Another voice, wearier than the first two. "We've chased them all night. Look over there. Dawn is coming." Molly found that she had wriggled halfway under Schmendrick's black cloak and buried her face in a clump of spiny dead grass. She dared not raise her head, but she opened her eyes and saw that the air was glowing strangely light. The second man said, "You're a fool. It's a good 2 hours to morning. Besides, we're heading west." "In that case," the third voice replied, "I'm going home." Footsteps started briskly back up the road. The first man called, "Wait, don't go! Wait, I'll go with you!" To the second man he muttered hastily, "I'm not going home. I just want to retrace our trail a little way. I still think I heard them, and I've dropped my tinderbox somewhere." Molly could hear him edging off as he spoke. "Damn you for cowards!" the second man swore. "Wait a moment, then. Will you wait till I try what Drin told me?" The retreating footsteps hesitated, and he chanted loudly. "Warmer than summer, more filling than food, sweeter than woman and dearer than blood." "Hurry," the voice said. "Hurry. Look at the sky. What is this nonsense?" Even the second man's voice was growing nervous. "It isn't nonsense. Drin treats his money so well, cannot bear to be parted from him. Most touching relationship you ever saw. This is the way he calls to it." He went on rapidly, quavering a little. "Stronger than water and kinder than dove. Say the name of the one you love." "Drin," rang the gold coins in Schmendrick's purse. "Drin, drin, 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 drin." Then everything happened. The ragged black cloak whipped against Molly's cheek as Schmendrick rolled to his knees, groping desperately for the purse. It buzzed like a rattlesnake in his hand. He hurled it far into the brush, but the 3 men were running at them together, daggers as red as though they had already struck. Beyond King Hagrid's castle, a burning brightness was rising, breaking into the night like a great shoulder. The magician stood erect, menacing the attackers with demons, metamorphoses, paralyzing ailments. and secret judo holds. Molly picked up a rock. With an old, gay, terrible cry of ruin, the unicorn reared out of her hiding place. Her hooves came slashing down like a rain of razors, her mane raged, and on her forehead she wore a plume of lightning. The three assassins dropped their daggers and hid their faces, and even Molly Grew and Schmendrick cowered before her. But the unicorn saw none of them. Mad, dancing, sea-white, she bellowed her challenge again, and the brightness answered her with a bellow like the sound of ice breaking up in the spring. Drin's men fled, stumbling and shrieking. Hagrid's castle was on fire, tossing wildly in a sudden cold wind. Molly said aloud, "But it has to be the sea, it's supposed to be." She thought that she could see a window as far away as it was, and a gray face. Then, the Red Bull came. I'm gonna pause here to get some water. I'll be right back, everybody. Welcome back. Last chapter for the day. Chapter 8. He was the color of blood, not the springing blood of the heart, but the blood that stirs under an old wound that never really healed. A terrible light poured from him like sweat, and his roar started landslides flowing into one another. His horns were as pale as scars. For one moment the unicorn faced him, frozen as a wave about to break. Then the light of her horn went out, and she turned and fled. The Red Bull bellowed again and leaped down after her. The unicorn had never been afraid of anything. She was immortal, but she could be killed. By a harpy, by a dragon, or a chimera, by a stray arrow loosed at a squirrel. But dragons could only kill her. They could never make her forget what she was, or themselves forget that even dead she would still be more beautiful than they. The Red Bull did not know her, and yet she could feel that it was herself he sought, and no white mare. Fear blew her dark then, and she ran away, while the bull's raging ignorance filled the sky and spilled over into the valley. The trees lunged at her, and she veered wildly among them. She who slipped so softly through eternity without bumping into anything. Behind her they were breaking like glass in the rush of the Red Bull. He roared once again, and a great branch clubbed her on the shoulder so hard that she staggered and fell. She was up immediately, but now roots humped under her feet as she ran, and others burrowed as busily as moles to cut across the path. Vines struck at her like strangling snakes. Creepers wove webs between the trees. Dead boughs crashed all around her. She fell a second time. The bull's hooves on the earth boomed through her bones, and she cried out. She must have found some way out of the trees, for she was running on the hard, bald plain that lay beyond the prosperous pasture lands of Hag's Gate. Now she had room to race, and a unicorn is only loping when she leaves the hunter kicking his burst and sinking horse. She moved with the speed of life, winking from one body to another, or running down a sword, swifter than anything burdened with legs or wings. Yet without looking back, she knew that the Red Bull was gaining on her, coming like the moon, the sullen, swollen hunter's moon. She could feel the shock of the livid horns in her side, as though he had already struck. Ripe, sharp corn stalks leaned together to make a hedge at her breast, but she trampled them down. Silver wheat fields turned cold and gummy when the bull breathed on them. They dragged at her legs like snow. Still she ran, bleating and defeated, hearing the butterflies' icy chiming. They passed down all the roads long ago, and the Red Bull ran close behind them. He had killed them all. Suddenly the bull was facing her as though he had been lifted like a chess piece, swooped through the air and set down again to bar her way. He did not charge immediately, and she did not run. He had been huge when she first fled him, but in the pursuit he had grown so vast that she could not imagine all of him. Now he seemed to curve with the curve of the bloodshot sky, his legs like great whirlwinds, his head rolling like the northern lights. His nostrils wrinkled and rumbled as he searched for her, and the unicorn realized that the Red Bull was blind. If he had rushed her then, she would have met him, tiny and despairing, with her darkened horn, even though he stamped her to pieces. He was swifter than she, better to face him now than to be caught running. But the bull advanced slowly, with a kind of sinister daintiness, as though he were trying not to frighten her, and again she broke before him. With a low, sad cry, she whirled and ran back the way she had come, back through the tattered fields and over the plain, toward King Haggard's castle, dark and hunched as ever, and the Red Bull went after her, following her fear. Schmendrick and Molly had been spun away like chips when the bull went by. Molly slammed breathless and witless against the ground, and the magician hurled into a tangle of thorns that cost him half his cloak and an eighth of his skin. They got up when they could and went limping in pursuit, leaning on one another. Neither one said a word. The way through the trees was easier for them than the unicorn had found it, for the Red Bull had been there since. Molly and the magician scrambled over great tree trunks, not only smashed, but trodden halfway into the ground, and dropped to hands and knees to crawl around crevices they could not fathom in the dark. No hooves could have made these, Molly thought dazedly. The earth had torn itself, shrinking from the burden of the bull. She thought of the unicorn, and her heart paled. When they came out on the plain, they saw her, far and faint, a tuft of white water on the wind, almost invisible in the glare of the Red Bull. Molly grew a little crazy with weariness and fear, saw them moving the way stars and stones move through space, forever falling, forever following, forever alone. The Red Bull would never reach the unicorn, not until now caught up with new, bygone with begin. Molly smiled serenely, but the blazing shadow loomed over the unicorn until the bull seemed to be all around her. She reared, swerved, and sprang away in another direction, only to meet the bull there, his head lowered and his jaws drooling thunder. Again she turned, and again, backing and sidling, making crafty little dashes to this side or that, and each time the Red Bull headed her off by standing still. He did not attack, but he left her no way to go, save one. He's driving her, Schmendrick said quietly. If he wanted to kill her, he could have done it by now. He's driving her the way he drove the others, to the castle, to Haggard. I wonder why. Molly said, "Do something." Her voice was strangely calm and casual, and the magician answered her in the same tone. There's nothing I can do. The unicorn fled once more, pitifully tireless, and the Red Bull let her have room to run, but none to turn. When she faced him for a third time, she was close enough for Molly to see her hind legs shivering like those of a frightened dog. Now she set herself to stand, pawing the ground wickedly and laying back her small, lean ears. But she could make no sound, and her horn did not grow bright again. She cowered when the Red Bull's bellow made the sky ripple and crack, and yet she did not back away. "Please," Molly Grew said, "please do something." Schmendrick turned on her, and his face was wild with helplessness. What can I do? What can I do with my magic? Hat tricks? Penny tricks? Or the one where I scramble stones to make an omelet? Would that entertain the Red Bull, do you think? Or should I try the trick with the singing oranges? I'll try whatever you suggest, for I would certainly be happy to be of some practical use. Molly did not answer him. The bull came on, and the unicorn crouched lower and lower, until she seemed about to snap in two. Schmendrick said, I know what to do. If I could, I'd change her into some other creature, some beast, too humble for the bull to be concerned with. But only a great magician, a wizard like Nikos, who was my teacher, would have that kind of power. To transform a unicorn, anyone who could do that could juggle the seasons and shuffle years like playing cards. And I have no more power than you have. Less. For you can touch her, and I cannot. Then he said suddenly, Look, it is over. The unicorn was standing very still before the Red Bull, her head down and her whiteness drabbled to a soapy gray. She looked gaunt and small, and even Molly, who loved her, could not keep from seeing that a unicorn is an absurd animal when the shining has gone out of her. Tail like the lion's tail, deer legs, goat feet, the mane cold and fine as foam over my hand, the charred horn, the eyes, oh, the eyes! Molly took hold of Schmendrick's arm and dug her nails into it as hard as she could. You have magic, she said. She heard her own voice as deep and clear as a sibyl's. Maybe you can't find it, but it's there. You called up Robin Hood, and there is no Robin Hood, but he came, and he was real. And that is magic. You have all the power you need if you dare to look for it. Schmendrick regarded her in silence, staring as hard as though his green eyes were beginning the search for his magic in Molly Grew's eyes. The bull stepped lightly toward the unicorn, no longer pursuing, but commanding her with the weight of his presence, and she moved ahead of him, docile, obedient. He followed like a sheepdog, guiding her in the direction of King Haggard's jagged tower in the sea. Oh, please! Molly's voice was crumbling now. Please, it's not fair. It can't be happening. He'll drive her to Haggard and no one will ever see her again. No one. Please. You're a magician. You won't let him? Her fingers struck even deeper into Schmendrick's arm. Do something! She wept. Don't let him! Do something! Schmendrick was prying futilely at her clenched fingers. I'm not going to do a damn thing, he said through his teeth, until you let go of my arm. Oh, Molly said. I'm sorry. You can cut off the circulation like that, you know, the magician said severely. He rubbed his arm and took a few steps forward into the path of the Red Bull. There he stood with his arms folded and his head high, though it drooped now and then, because he was very tired. Maybe this time, Molly heard him mutter. Maybe this time. Nikos said. What was it Nikos said? I don't remember. It's been so long. It's been so long. There was an odd, old sorrow in his voice that Molly had never heard before. Then a gaiety leaped up like a flame as he said, Well, who knows? Who knows? If this is not the time, perhaps I can make it so. There's this much of comfort, friend Schmendrick. For once, I don't see how you can possibly make things any worse than they already are. And he laughed softly. The Red Bull, being blind, took no notice of the tall figure in the road until he was almost upon it. Then he halted, sniffing the air, storm stirring in his throat, but a certain confusion showing in the swing of his great head. The unicorn stopped when he stopped, and Schmendrick's breath broke to see her so tractable. Run! He called to her. Run now! But she never looked at him, or back at the bull, or at anything but the ground. At the sound of Schmendrick's voice, the bull's rumble grew louder and more menacing. He seemed eager to be out of the valley with the unicorn, and the magician thought he knew why. Beyond the towering brightness of the Red Bull, he could see 2 or 3 sallow stars and a cautious hint of a warmer light. Dawn was near. He doesn't care for daylight, Schmendrick said to himself. That's worth knowing. Once more he shouted to the unicorn to fly, but his only answer came in the form of a roar like a drum roll. The unicorn bolted forward, and Schmendrick had to spring out of her way, or she would have run him down. Close behind her came the bull, driving her swiftly now as the wind drives the thin, torn mist. There's another image here. Go ahead and show you. The power of his passage picked Schmendrick up and dropped him elsewhere, tumbling and rolling to keep from being trampled, his eyes jarred blind and his head full of flames. He thought he heard Molly Grew scream. Scrabbling to one knee, he saw that the Red Bull had herded the unicorn almost to the beginning of the trees. If she would only try one more time to escape. But she was the bull's and not her own. The magician had one glimpse of her, pale and lost between the pale horns, before the wild red shoulders surged across his sight. Then, swaying and sick and beaten, he closed his eyes and let his hopelessness march through him, until something woke somewhere that had wakened him once before. He cried aloud for fear and for joy. What words the magic spoke this second time he never knew surely. They left him like eagles, and he let them go. And when the last one was away, the emptiness rushed back with a thunderclap that threw him on his face. It happened as quickly as that. This time he knew before he picked himself up that the power had been and gone. Ahead, the Red Bull was standing still, nosing at something on the ground. Schmendrick could not see the unicorn. He went forward as fast as he could, but it was Molly who first drew near enough to see what the bull was sniffing. She put her fingers in her mouth like a child. At the feet of the Red Bull, there lay a young girl, spilled into a very small heap of light and shadow. She was naked, and her skin was the color of snow by moonlight. Fine, tangled hair, white as a waterfall, came down almost to the small of her back. Her face was hidden in her arms. "Oh," Molly said. "Oh, what have you done?" And heedless of any danger, she ran to the girl and knelt beside her. The Red Bull raised his huge blind head and swung it slowly in Schmendrick's direction. He seemed to be waning and fading as the gray sky grew light, though he still smoldered as savagely bright as crawling lava. The magician wondered what his true size was, and his color, when he was alone. Once more, the Red Bull sniffled at the still form, stirring it with his freezing breath. Then without a sound he bounded away into the trees and was gone from sight in 3 gigantic strides. Schmendrick had a last vision of him as he gained the rim of the valley. No shape at all, but a swirling darkness. The red darkness you see when you close your eyes in pain. The horns had become the two sharpest towers of old King Haggard's crazy castle. Molly Grew had taken the white girl's head onto her lap and was whispering over and over, "What have you done?" The girl's face, quiet in sleep and close to smiling, was the most beautiful that Schmendrick had ever seen. It hurt him and warmed him at the same time. Molly smoothed the strange hair, and Schmendrick noticed on the forehead, above and between the closed eyes, a small raised mark, darker than the rest of the skin. It was neither a scar nor a bruise. It looked like a flower. "What do you mean, what have I done?" he demanded of the moaning Molly. "Only saved her from the bull by magic, that's what I've done. By magic, woman! By my own true magic!" Now he was helpless with delight, for he wanted to dance and he wanted to be still. He shook with shouting and speeches, and yet there was nothing that he wanted to say. He ended by laughing foolishly, hugging himself until he gasped, and sprawling down beside Molly as his legs let go. "Give me your cloak," Molly said. The magician beamed at her, blinking. She reached over and ungently pulled the shredded cloak from his shoulders. Then she wrapped it around the sleeping girl as much as it would wrap. The girl shone through it, like the sun through leaves. "Doubtless you're wondering how I plan to return her to her proper shape," Schmendrick offered. "Wonder not. The power will come to me when I need it. I know that much now. One day it will come when I call, but that time is not yet." Impulsively he seized Molly Grew, hugging her head in his long arms. "But you were right!" he cried. "You were right! It is there, and it is mine!" Molly pulled away from him, one cheek ruffed red and both ears mashed. The girl sighed in her lap, ceased to smile, turned her face from the sunrise. Molly said, "Schmendrick, you poor man. You magician, don't you see?" "See what? There's nothing to see." But his voice was suddenly hard and wary, and the green eyes were beginning to be frightened. "The Red Bull came for a unicorn, so she had to become something else. You begged me to change her. What is it that frets you now?" Molly shook her head in the wavering way of an old woman. She said, "I didn't know you meant to turn her into a human girl. You would have done better." She did not finish, but looked away from him. One hand continued to stroke the white girl's hair. "The magic chose the shape, not I," Schmendrick answered. "A mountebank may select this cheat or that, but the magician is a porter, a donkey carrying his master where he must. The magician calls, but the magic chooses. If it changes a unicorn to a human being, then that was the only thing to do." His face was fevered with an ardent delirium which made him look even younger. "I am a bearer," he sang. "I am a dwelling. I am a messenger." "You are an idiot," Molly Grew said fiercely. "Do you hear me? You're a magician, all right, but you're a stupid magician." But the girl was trying to wake, her hands opening and closing, and her eyelids beating like birds' breasts. As Molly and Schmendrick looked on, the girl made a soft sound and opened her eyes. They were farther apart than common, and somewhat deeper set, and they were as dark as the deep sea, and illuminated, like the sea, by strange, glimmering creatures that never rise to the surface. The unicorn could have been transformed into a lizard, Molly thought, or into a shark, a snail, a goose, and somehow still her eyes would have given the change away. To me, anyway. I would know. The girl lay without moving, her eyes finding herself in Molly's eyes and in Schmendrick's. Then in one motion she was on her feet, the black cloak falling back across Molly's lap. For a moment she turned in a circle, staring at her hands, which she held high and useless, close to her breast. She bobbed and shambled, like an ape doing a trick, and her face was the silly, bewildered face of a joker's victim. And yet she could make no move that was not beautiful. Her trapped terror was more lovely than any joy that Molly had ever seen, and that was the most terrible thing about it. "Donkey," Molly said. "Messenger." I can change her back, the magician answered hoarsely. Don't worry about it. I can change her back. Shining in the sun, the white girl hobbled to and fro on her strong young legs. She stumbled suddenly and fell, and it was with a bad fall because she did not know how to catch herself with her hands. Molly flew to her, but the girl crouched on the ground, staring at her, and spoke in a low voice. What have you done to me? Molly began to cry. Schmendrick came forward, his face cold and wet, but his voice level. I turned you into a human being to save you from the Red Bull. There was nothing else I could do. I will turn you to yourself again as soon as I can. The Red Bull, the girl whispered. She was trembling wildly as though something were shaking and hammering at her skin from within. He was too strong, she said. Too strong. There was no end to his strength and no beginning. He is older than I. Her eyes widened, and it seemed to Molly that the bull moved in them, crossing their depths like a flaming fish and vanishing. The girl began to touch her face timidly, recoiling from the feel of her own features. Her curled fingers brushed the mark on her forehead, and she closed her eyes and gave a thin, stabbing howl of loss and weariness and utter despair. What have you done to me? She cried. I will die here. She tore at the smooth body, and blood followed her fingers. I will die here! I will die here! Yet there was no fear in her face, though it ramped in her voice, in her hands and in her feet, in the white hair that fell down over her new body. Her face remained quiet and untroubled. Molly huddled over her as near as she dared, begging her not to hurt herself. But Schmendrick said, Be still, and the two words cracked like autumn branches. He said, The magic knew what it was doing. Be still and listen. Why did you not let the bull kill me? The white girl moaned. Why did you not leave me to the harpy? That would have been kinder than closing me in this cage. The magician winced, remembering Molly Grew's mocking accusation, but he spoke with a desperate calmness. In the first place, it's quite an attractive shape, he said. You couldn't have done much better and still remained human. She looked at herself, sideways, at her shoulders and along her arms, then down her scratched and welting body. She stood on one foot to inspect the soul of the other, cocked her eyes up to see the silver brows, squinted down her cheeks to catch a flash of her nose, and even peered closely at the sea-green veins inside her wrists, themselves as gaily made as young otters. At last, she turned her face to the magician, and again he caught his breath. I have made magic, he thought, but sorrow winked sharp in his throat, like a fish-hook setting fast. All right, he said. It would make no difference to you if I had changed you into a rhinoceros, which is where the whole silly myth got started. But in this guise, you have some chance of reaching King Hagrid and finding out what has become of your people. As a unicorn, you would only suffer their fate, unless you think you could defeat the bull if you met him a second time. The white girl shook her head. No, she answered. Never. Another time I would not stand so long. Her voice was too soft, as though its bones had been broken. She said, My people are gone, and I will follow them soon, whatever shape you trap me in. But I would have chosen any other than this for my prison. A rhinoceros is as ugly as a human being, and it too is going to die. But at least it never thinks it is beautiful. No, it never thinks that, the magician agreed. That's why it goes on being a rhinoceros and will never be welcome, even at Hagrid's court. But a young girl. A girl to whom it can never mean anything that she is not a rhinoceros. Such a girl, while the king and his son seek to solve her, might unravel her own riddle until she comes to its end. Rhinoceri are not questing beasts, but young girls are. The sky was hot and curdled. The sun had already melted into a lion-colored puddle, and on the plain of Hag's Gate nothing stirred but the stale, heavy wind. The naked girl with the flower mark on her forehead stared silently at the green-eyed man, and the woman watched them both. In the tawny morning, King Hagrid's castle seemed neither dark nor accursed, but merely grimy, run down, and poorly designed. Its skinny spires looked nothing like a bull's horns, but rather like those on a jester's cap, or like the horns of a dilemma, Schmendrick thought. They never have, just two. The white girl said, I am myself still. This body is dying. I can feel it rotting all around me. How can anything that is going to die be real? How can it be truly beautiful? Molly Grew put the magician's cloak around her shoulders again, not for modesty or seemliness, but out of a strange pity, as though to keep her from seeing herself. I will tell you a story, Schmendrick said. As a child, I was apprenticed to the mightiest magician of all, the great Nikos, whom I have spoken of before. But even Nikos, who could turn cats into cattle, snowflakes into snowdrops, and unicorns into men, could not change me into so much as a carnival card sharp. At last he said to me, My son, your ineptitude is so vast, your incompetence so profound, that I am certain you are inhabited by a greater power than I have ever known. Unfortunately, it seems to be working backward at the moment, and even I can find no way to set it right. It must be that you are meant to find your own way to reach your power in time, but frankly, you should live so long as that will take you. Therefore, I grant it that you shall not age from this day forth, but will travel the world round and round, eternally inefficient, until at last you come to yourself and know what you are. Don't thank me. I tremble at your doom. The white girl regarded him out of the unicorn's clear, amaranthine eyes, gentle and frightening in the unused face, but she said nothing. It was Molly Grew who asked, And if you should find your magic, what then? Then the spell will be broken and I will begin to die as I began at my birth. Even the greatest wizards grow old like other men, and die. He swayed and nodded and then snapped awake again, a tall, thin, shabby man, smelling of dust and drink. I told you that I was older than I look, he said. I was born mortal, and I have been immortal for a long, foolish time. And one day, I will be mortal again, so I know something that a unicorn cannot know. Whatever can die is beautiful, more beautiful than a unicorn who lives forever, and who is the most beautiful creature in the world. Do you understand me? No, she said. The magician smiled wearily. You will. You're in the story with the rest of us now, and you must go with it, whether you will or no. If you want to find your people, if you want to become a unicorn again, then you must follow the fairy tale to King Hagrid's castle, and wherever else it chooses to take you. The story cannot end without the princess. The white girl said, I will not go. She stepped away, her body weary and the cold hair falling down. She said, I am no princess, no mortal, and I will not go. Nothing but evil has happened to me since I left my forest, and nothing but evil can have become of unicorns in this country. Give me my true shape again, and I'll return to my trees, to my pool, to my own place. Your tail has no power over me. I am a unicorn. I am the last unicorn. Had she said that once before, long ago, in the blue-green silence of the trees? Schmendrick continued to smile, but Molly Grew said, Change her back. You said you could change her. Let her go home. I cannot, the magician answered. I told you, the magic is not mine to command. Not yet. That is why I too must go on to the castle, and the fate or fortune that waits there. If I tried to undo the transformation now, I might actually turn her into a rhinoceros. That would be the best thing that could happen. As for the worst... He shivered and fell silent. The girl turned from them and looked away at the castle that stooped over the valley. She could see no movement at any window or among the tottering turrets, or any sign of the Red Bull. Yet she knew that he was there, brooding at the castle's roots till night should fall again, strong beyond strength, invincible as the night itself. For a second time she touched the place on her forehead where her horn had been. When they turned again, they were asleep where they sat, the man and the woman. Their heads were pillowed on air, and their mouths hung open. She stood by them, watching them breathe, one hand holding the black cloak closed at her throat. Very faintly, for the first time, The smell of the sea came to her. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 8, our last chapter for tonight. Whew! A lot happened there today, huh? I don't really have anything to end on today, except, tune in next time. Same Ray time, same Ray channel. Oof. I just kind of gotta sit with that for a bit. Think about all that happened. Go, white girl, go. So, I hope that you enjoyed today's read-along session, today's StoRei time. Poor unicorn, she got turned into a white girl. I have a confession to make. Stop the music. I have a confession to make. I'm white. The last unicorn, apparently. I loved reading for you guys tonight. I always do. Chat, is this real? I'm pretty sure you have seen my face enough times on this channel to know that that's not true. I was quoting a thing. That was pretty fun. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for, sitting through and, thank you for being such a good audience. Always makes me happy to see you guys here. But unlike yesterday, I don't really have much to ramble about because, well, I mean, aside the story developments, I didn't really have any different voices to use, except for Drin. And like a few other like throwaway characters, but I mean, I just kind of used the, at this point, sort of stereotypical deep voice for Drin. Sorry, I fell asleep on 2 occasions. Oh, well, I guess you can just call this segment, instead of StoRei time, you could call it Ray SMR or something, and justify it as, Can we talk about the people of Hagsgate like Omelas too? Remind me again what Omelas is? Is that the one where, like, they chose one person to suffer forever or whatever? I think that's where the legend of Angra Mainyu comes from. But yeah, I mean, if you fell asleep, that's no big deal. I mean, the stream is public, the VOD is public, so you know you can always come back to these and catch up on the parts that you might have dozed off on. You know, I mean, it's nighttime for a lot of people who are tuning in, so it's kind of the primordial response at this point to fall asleep when being read to, right? If I'm being totally honest, even I start to get a little droopy-eyed when I start reading through certain parts. It's especially with this book. I notice with this book in particular, even I start to get affected either by the sound of my own voice or by the writing. It's just so like the writing is so like dreamlike. There's so much imagery that goes on in these. Almost to the point of detriment, but not quite. But yeah, I mean, you know, if you fall asleep, then, you know, segment is ASMR. Or ASM right, yeah, that part works better when it's written. Eh, we'll call it ASMR. I'm vain. Just you wait till just you wait till I get a chance to figure out how to do an ASMR segment. You guys are screwed. Well, I mean, if I can sound good during it. Unlike you. But yeah, thank you so much for coming by. Um, really is a pleasure to just get to read to you guys and just kind of share the world of these stories with you, you know? It's really nice. It's like I think the way I've structured it is really good in the sense that like it feels like tuning in and doing like a watch along of an episode or two or of something together, and it's a nice reprieve. So thank you for being my audience for that. But I don't want this stream to get too long in the tooth. It's already on the upper end of 2 hours, but yeah, I don't want the VOD to be too long for people to catch up to. So I'm gonna go ahead and say come back tomorrow, usual time, 8 p.m. Ray Standard Time. RST. Or is it RDT? Is it Daylight Saving? I don't freaking. No, Daylight Savings Time ended. Or something. Yeah. God. I hate Daylight Savings Time. It makes no freaking sense anymore. Anyway. Come back tomorrow. And I'll read some more to you guys. So, thank you so much for tuning in. You guys make sure to eat well. Stay hydrated. Get some good rest. And as always, make sure to unshrimp yourselves. I love you all so much, Rainiacs. You guys make this worthwhile. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your night. Have a radiant rest of your day. Take care, everybody. Bye.